Hello, good evening. I've watched a video entitled Lucy Letby Exclusive, the man who took down, in quotes, evil and, in quotes, depraved baby murdering killer nurse. And that's on the Talk TV YouTube channel. And it's an interview, an 18-minute interview, just shy of 18 minutes, with Dr Dewi Evans, who was well, it's a bit difficult to know always what to call him. You could say expert witness, but he said that term was too flash for him. That's a quote. It's too flash for him. And he described himself as an independent medical witness. I've transcribed the video. I've listened to it and written it all out, everything that he says. And I want to analyse it, really. I mean, I'm not a statement analyst or anything. And in light of that, I actually heard from Peter Hyatt, who is a statement analyst from America, that he is actually working on, I don't know if he's working on some of these interviews, but he's going to be looking at the so-called confession note, the green note from Lucy, with a team, or he said, I've got a team working on it. He contacted me about that just because I asked him about it. But I think he was going to do it anyway. It was just that he got back to me, and I was really, really glad to hear that there might be something coming out there. But anyway, we can all make inferences based on what people say in interviews, and that's what I'm trying to do by making a transcription of this interview with Dewi Evans. There's been a number of articles written about him in terms of his history with other cases in which he's been criticised by certain judges and other people related to the cases he's been involved in. There's two articles that I could refer you to, which I might have mentioned I did mention the other one in the last video. It's called chimpinvestor.com, and the article is called The Twilight Zone of the Lucy Letby Case. The Twilight Zone of the Lucy Letby Case. And the second, the pertinent article is called Did Dr Evans Break the Rules? In that one, they're talking about his registration status and whether he was registered with the GMC to testify as an expert, and the assertion is that he was not licensed to practice by the GMC when he testified in earlier cases, one being in 2018. There's been some discussion on Twitter that he must have or did re-register with the GMC before the trial of Lucy Letby, but prior to that, it is suggested that between 2015 and 19, he was not registered, or the finesse here is that he was registered but not licensed to practice. What the ramifications of that, I don't know. Is that something that affects his status in terms of he's on this case, as he says himself in the interview with Talk TV, from May 2017. What was his status then in terms of his license to practice, in terms of what he was being used for? At that time, he's a retired paediatrician consultant. He's not an active one, but he's offering up his services, if that's how it happened, in May 2017. So yeah, if you want to check out some of the detail on the research that people have done with regard to the cases he's been involved in historically and some of the problems with them, go to the chimpinvestor.com site, and you'll find it all listed there, and a discussion whether he quote unquote broke the rules by not being licensed to practice by the GMC, while at the same time acting as an expert. But then he, as he actually stated in the trial with Lucy Letby, he demurred from that title, and he said, quote, "That's too flash a term for me. I'm an independent medical witness." So to move on to the actual video, I was talking about his interview with Talk TV. It was recorded about 2 weeks ago, so very, very shortly after the verdict, and he's obviously more relaxed. He's not on the stand giving evidence. He's talking to a journalist. So he's obviously, it's all been done. He's sort of to some extent been seen as the person who discovered the crimes, as it were, So I don't have the sort of the YouTube channel setting that means I can sort of download that video, but I thought that's why I've transcribed it, and you can go and watch the video, and I think I've accurately transcribed what he's saying here in order to look at it line by line and just ask questions and see what people think about it. So starting at the beginning, around the 1 minute mark after he's been introduced by the interviewer, he says, this is a quote, "It is beyond belief what happened to these babies." Now, I don't want to make a cheap point, but it's an interesting phrase, I think. It's beyond belief. And so the people who are concerned about his evidence and concerned about him may well think it is beyond belief, all his theories, that we shouldn't believe it. It's beyond belief. At 1 minute 26, I stopped writing the times after a while, but I just get into the dialogue because you can listen to it for yourself. I could have him audio saying it here, but it would just break it up, I think. At 1:26, he says, this is Dewi Evans in the interview with Talk TV, "Responsibility rests with NHS managers at Chester who failed to listen to the consultants despite their concerns during," and then he stumbles, "after 3 months following the first event." What do I think about that? I'm interested what you think as well in the comments, obviously, always. Well, the first event, the thing is, the management and indeed the consultants, they don't know what the first event is or when it was. It only becomes an event in his language once he's decided to order the event. Afterwards, when he's from May 2017, when Dewi Evans gets involved in this. Now, how that happens exactly, we're not entirely sure. Does he approach the police, or do the police approach him? We don't know. So yeah. So following the first, he's kind of mixing things that were known. Well, I say known in inverted commas because we don't know what that means. He can talk about the event in terms of either a baby's health deteriorating or sadly dying, but obviously in his mind and subsequent to the trial, it's an attempted murder or a murder. But at the time, when he's criticising the managers here who didn't listen to the consultants, he's saying that they didn't do it despite the concerns right since the first event, but nobody knew what the event was. And according to Karen Rees, the head of nursing, the very first time that concerns were raised with her from Dr Brearey, one of the so-called Gang of Four, it was essentially about Lucy Letby's clinical practice. Karen Rees, the head of nursing at Chester, maintains that Dr Brearey said they were concerned about her clinical practice. There was no mention of attempted murders or murders at that stage. And that can lead on to another sequence of thinking that they just kind of they wanted her off that unit, and had that happened at that stage, we would have never known about Lucy Letby in the general public. There would have never been a case. She would have moved on to another department or another hospital or given up nursing or whatever. That would have been the end of it. That's my supposition, obviously, or speculation, is that would have been the end of it. But the nursing manager, Karen Rees, stuck by her and said, "There's no evidence you're bringing me." Now, this is interesting where there's I know I'm going off the video here, but this is going to take several videos to do anyway. There's a very interesting fault line out here, and there's a video of David Brearey, Dr Brearey, saying that he said to Karen Rees, "Oh, are you gonna you know, there's 7 consultants here saying that there's babies in danger. So are you, Karen Rees, head of nursing, going to take the responsibility if tomorrow one of our babies is harmed? Now, Karen Rees categorically denies that, and she said they brought nothing to me, they brought no evidence to me, and they certainly didn't give me an ultimatum like that. So there's an incredible fault line there, and that's really interesting. So one of those 2 people are lying. One of them are lying. I know what I suspect and think who that is, and I wonder what you think. There's 2 short videos out there, and you'll find them are about a minute or 2 minutes long. One is with Karen Rees, the head of nursing, and one is with Dr David Brearey, who's one of the so-called Gang of 4 of consultants. I'm going to wrap this up soon because I'm realising there's so much in this. I'm just going to make a sequence of videos about that other video, the Talk TV interview with Dr. Dewi Evans. David is his name. That's his official name that he's registered as, or was registered as, a Dr. David Evans. Dewi's Welsh for David, isn't it? Just the final thing I'll say on this one is that he reiterates, after criticising the managers for not acting following the first event, even though they didn't know at that point it was an event, didn't know that. So he's kind of pushing the future timeline back into the past, if you see what I mean. He says, and this is a theme, this is a motif all the way through it, he's going for these managers. He seems to have a very personal animus towards managers per se in the NHS, and that might be from his own personal experiences working as a paediatrician consultant, as he says, for 30 years prior to moving into this other work, the medical legal work that he eventually did, and consultancy work. But he says managers have taken over far too much control over the care of patients. And, you know, he may have a point there from his perspective and in truth, but you'll see that as a motive as it goes forward. He's really going for them, and he sees obviously this group of doctors, perhaps relates to them as complaining to the managers and not being listened to, not being heard, not being respected, and in fact being told to apologise. But I'll leave that for the next video, and we'll see where we are with that. And thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.